Hello there, my awesome patrons. Welcome to October's Q&A video. You guys had a great month. I hope you're about to have an awesome Halloween. I'm super excited for Halloween tomorrow. I'll post some pictures of our family costume. It's needless to say, it's been a lot of work. But we got there. We got to the finish line. We actually went to a couple parties this weekend. Um, One with the kids, one my wife and I went to. We won first place in the costume contest, so that was kind of a nice surprise. And then tomorrow, obviously, at all the trick or treating, we get to show off our costumes some more. So I'm really excited about that. Um, we have a few really good questions this month. So let's dive right in. I'm gonna put one of the simple. One of them's kind of heavy. I'm gonna put one of the simple ones first. Um, so without further ado, Martin Seeger asks, have you played around with generative AI? I did once. I found I couldn't tell you what engine it was, but there was like a just a website running a generator where you put the prompt in, and I did fiddle with it. And so I assume like you'd like to know a little bit more about my thoughts on that as opposed to just have I have I done it. Uh Setting aside all of the ethical implications of AI, of which I think there are many. Like, obviously, as an artist myself, um, not an artist who I think is in danger of having of necessarily being replaced by AI, and what I do very specifically is I'm probably not uh you know high up there on the risk, but but there are definitely artists whose jobs are endangered or being devalued as a result of this. But anyway, that's a whole other discussion. Setting that aside and focusing purely on the technology of AI art, and even when I say AI art, like I'm air quoting that in my head. Um, it's impressive to a point. It's impressive to a point where I feel like I've gotten to a point where I've gotten fairly consistent with being able to just instantly recognize art that was done with AI. I'll be scrolling through social media and there'll be like an advertisement or like a news, some sort of thing, and the thumbnail. Like I can almost always just like you look at it, it's like that was done with AI. Like that was and because AI artwork tends to have, I mean, apart from the very obvious telltale signs like nine fingers or hands that like merge into armor and just all that other stuff, because the AI is not making decisions, it's just trying to replicate based on pixels it's scraped from real artists. Apart from those telltale signs, AI art very often has a sort of homogenized look to it because of the way it's like just compiling data. It can create a very impressive looking piece of art, but also a lot of the other art it produces is going to look very similar, and it just kind of has this like not like this plasticky sort of sheen to it. So anyway, so there's limitations there. um when I fiddled with this generator, what I found uh the most glaring problem was is that while you can put in a prompt, uh you know blue sunset over a field of bananas, or whatever, um and it's going to spit out something that it thinks matches that. It never spat out, well, like the few prompts I put in with, and I fiddled with word order and descriptors and stuff like that. uh it never I couldn't get it to spit out what I had in my mind. Okay, like, if that makes sense. So like, if I wanted, like, when I sit down to draw something, I usually visualize the composition of it, and I can relatively produce that on paper. I couldn't you can't I couldn't get AI to do that. Like it could get some other stuff. It could get close. It could have the elements I'd asked for, but not in the way that I had wanted to see it. And I don't think that you can necessarily get AI to do that for you. And that might only be a problem for someone who is an artist. Uh, Typically the people who are using AI this way and who are excited about AI like this are people who are not artists. And so if they say, give me a blue sunset over a field of bananas, they'll be happy with whatever the AI spits out because they don't really necessarily have like an artistic vision for what they wanted to see. They're just happy to see anything, I think. But for I think that, from my perspective, it was like, okay, it can produce something, but it's not useful in that I need a very specific something in a very specific way. And why, I'm not going to fight with a machine to try and get that when I could just do it. So I'm not all that impressed with it. All right, sorry. I thought that was actually going to be one of the like a super easy light question, and it got a little complicated. So let's try another super easy question. Anthony asks, "What is your process for creating the branching story of Starcaster Chronicles? If it's not a big trade secret." And then he goes on to actually list a couple of possible examples for how I do it. So, Anthony, it is not a big trade secret. In fact, it's not even really, um, it's not even like all that impressive. Bottom line is, whenever I'm sitting down to write a story, I'm making dozens of choices at every step, every point in a page. I'm making myriad choices. Um, about doing this, do the characters do that, what feels right. um when I write like for instance an analog and d-pad story or a story with the players for the campaign, um I'm making those choices. I am when I get to one of these forks, I'm looking at my options and I'm just saying like this one feels right or I like this one best, and that's what I go with, and you don't see any of the ones not taken. So really when it comes to Starcaster, all I do is when I get to one of those points where I'm like, Court could do this or he could do this, and that would be interesting too. I just don't make that decision. I let you guys make the decision. So it really is quite as simple as that. Now obviously I am I'm not looking to give you guys every tiny little decision because that's not interesting. Like, and there are definitely some forks in the road I get to where it's like, if I get to a point where it's like, well, Court can do this and I like that, or he can do this and I really don't like that, like, or like it leads to a place I really don't want us to go, like I won't give you that option. Um, I tend to make a choice when I see multiple avenues that I find equally interesting for the story, equally interesting for the characters, equally interesting for like the ripples for the future for because I also have to be able to see beyond each of those choices to some degree. Further down the road, I have to be able to see like, well, if we go this way, what do we then bounce off of in that direction, and is that cool? And if we go this way, like what's the next step there, and do I like that just as much? So in those instances I give the readers a choice. um, but that's all it is just letting you make those choices instead of me making the executive decision, which is what I mostly do anyway. And there is you do have a second part of your question though. How did switching from releasing a comic one day after the vote ends to releasing new pages a month after a vote change your approach to planning the story? So basically, just to clarify that, back when I was doing Starcaster Chronicles, um, before the Patreon, and I was doing Starcaster Chronicles on the main site, I basically treated it like any of the other storylines I do, where I was pretty much I wrote a lot of it ahead of time, but then I was pretty much producing it as I was releasing it. And especially like when we got to a choice, I couldn't write past a choice for obvious reasons. I had to know what you guys picked. So we would like write up to that uh or release up to that choice. You'd vote for like 24 or 48 hours, and then I would move forward based on that. And so mostly what's changed is being able to plan a little bit better from those choices. So now I give you guys, I give the Starcaster patrons some pages, and there might be a choice in there, and they have like 3-4 weeks maybe to get the vote in. Um, I can typically see which direction the vote's going to go within like a week. And then what that does is let me say, like, let me set my mind on the path that we are. So it's like, okay, when I give you the vote, it could go this way, but then I start to see, okay, we're going this way, and then I'm just, going further down the line. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, okay, this is gonna happen. What are the next few months look like, or next, the remainder of the issue. It just lets me extrapolate a little bit more, instead of like all of a sudden, we've made this choice and I'm rolling with it, and then I'm rolling with the next thing. It's just a little bit more creative elbow room, I guess I would say. All right, and finally, this month, Adam Adam wanted to know, or Adam says rather, last month you brought up the idea of maybe one day needing to paywall all of your work. Is the internet landscape so treacherous right now that this is something you're actively considering? And how have day-to-day business operations evolved for Control Alt Delete? So this is true. I did, and I've mentioned this a couple times before. But there is a possibility that at some point, and we are not there yet. This is like what we're talking about is like a very last resort, like um, kind of a thing. But there is the possibility that I will have to at some point reevaluate what I'm putting out, what I'm giving away for free versus what I am putting into Patreon and asking to be paid for. Um, Now, typically, I've done this comic for 21 years now, and I started it free, and it's still mostly pretty, all the major stuff anyway. I still update for free 3 days a week. Now, in the beginning, that was largely supported by um, the advertising income. So people come to the website that generates traffic numbers. Those traffic numbers translate in some manner to value for advertisers, and we would get paid for serving ads to those audiences. It didn't typically matter whether they clicked on or bought anything from them or whatever. It was just sort of a passive way to monetize the traffic. Now, in the last, I want to say in the last 10 years, um, advertising has just been on a steady decline. And there's a number of reasons for that. It's kind of like advertising's on a decline because ad blockers started becoming a thing, and especially like built-in ad blockers that into browsers that people don't even aren't even aware they're using. They're just in there, and um, so what happens is uh, like the income from advertising is going down per ad or per impression. So you then, like what we were doing for a while is trying to find new ways to balance that, and for a number of websites that meant like more ads, or doing those little video roll ads, or doing the you have to watch this, like what YouTube does, like you have to watch some of this video before you get to your video. um and also another part of it was the advertising industry switching from a sort of more curated experience, where like when we first started, I had an ad manager who would his job was literally interfacing with companies and working out terms, and he would be talking to EA, and they would say like, well, we have this new game, we'd like to get the advertisement going. can we purchase like a few weeks at this rate and blah blah blah. And there was some negotiation going on, and then we'd reach a deal and we'd get paid, and we'd run an EA an ad for like a game uh, for whatever. And then Google and Amazon and whatever brought in these automated, they're called like exchanges, where basically everything's just fed through an algorithm, and like there's a bidding system now. So like instead of interfacing directly with us, websites, we are signed up for an exchange, and they are signed, and like publishers or whatever, advertisers are signed up for an exchange, and they basically say, we want to advertise a thing where our budget is this, and we are willing to pay, X amount per impression, 10 cents, 5 cents, whatever it is per impression. And then the websites have I believe like kind of also similarly set like, well, we're willing to accept, it's a whole bidding thing now. um so like the prices for per impression eventually go down because other websites are like, well, we'll take less, and to get those few cents. And long story short, advertising is going like this. And for some reason in the last year, advertising has just, it's almost like gone off a cliff. I've talked to a number of people, both in the advertising industry, and other people who run websites that bring in revenue through ads. And everybody's like, for some reason, in the like post pandemic, the advertising industry is just like, it's a dumpster fire. It's I don't know what's going on, but um, I don't know if it's just an accelerated end to this decline that's been happening for a while. But whatever the reasons, I'm not qualified to really analyze those. Uh, the end result is that um, the income that I get from the giving away the free content on the website has changed, even though the traffic hasn't. The traffic is still there, but I'm making less from that traffic. So then basically, you know, it becomes simply a matter of like, what is my time worth? Because I'm still working, you know, full time here. I'm still working, 8 hours a day, 40, 50 hours a week, creating content, writing, doing all the things that I do. So it just seems very possible that at some point there is a threshold here where these two things don't make any sense anymore. Like the amount of work I'm doing versus and giving away for free versus the amount of passive income that it's generating, just doesn't make any sense anymore. So like I said, this is thoroughly a last uh like a last resort scenario. But it is possible that at some point I may have to shift the amount of content I'm giving away for free versus the amount of content I'm encouraging patronage. I'm using to encourage patronage with, will have to shift. And that probably won't mean like immediately just like I just stop putting comics on the website and everything is Patreon. It just might mean that I take my work hours in a given week and shift some of those for patrons, because these are the people that are keeping, that are making my career possible. These are the people that are keeping the roof over my head and feeding my children. So it would make sense that if I'm going to work X number of hours a week, why would 70% of that be given to people that either aren't supporting or that I'm seeing no return on? So like I would shift that percentage, if that makes sense. Like I said, I don't think that means I would just entirely stop but it might mean going down to like 1 or 2 days a week free, and then like if you enjoy what I do, and but also that would also mean adjusting the you know what the reward tiers are for patron. Um, but again, just to reiterate, we're not there yet. It's just, but it is something I have to consider. I have to look at, do I feel like that my time is being well spent? Is my time and my effort going to the right place to continue to do this job? So um I have in development, I have a new and I've talked about this in the past. I have this new kind of story, analog and D-pad year one, which is going to be um, like the entire first year of analog and D-pad story that we kind of skipped over with the reboot. You know, which will be a Patreon exclusive, and it's my hope that um, that kind of reward will entice some more people who are currently not patrons to sign up for that, while still being able to provide the three comics a week on the website. But there, there is also a limit to how much extra I can add to the Patreon and still maintain the free comics. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's obviously only so much I can produce in a given week. So, like, I think I can eke out like another project that to be a Patreon exclusive to try and entice some people to sign up. But there's only so much I can do with that before I need to start using hours um, that I would be giving away content to produce content I could get paid for. And the threshold, and like there's like a, the balance there is um and obviously if I were to entirely abandon the website, um or at least the free 3 day a week updates, I would lose some readership for sure. That's just natural. But I would say I have 100 readers, and I lose 90 of them, or 90 of them don't convert, and I only get 10 to say like, okay, I'll give $1 a month um to continue accessing some content. um does that dollar a month for those 10 people, if that becomes equal to or greater, and just to be clear, these are obviously like just example numbers, but if that becomes equal to or greater the amount of the that advertising is bringing in, well, it feels like it makes sense to do that. I mean, it feels like it makes sense to do that switch to try and coax a few more people into patronage, um, to balance out the lack of the advertising. So if I talk about, like we might see a shift more towards Patreon in the future, that's just what I'm talking about, is this whole consideration of like, at what point does it just not make any sense for me to give the comic away anymore, or as much of my time um, give it away anymore. So yeah, like I said, that's not right now. That's down the road some. I don't know what'll happen. We'll see. We'll just see how things shake out. But that's just part of, I think, part of doing business and creating content in a somewhat changing landscape like this. And so, that wraps up this Q&A video, and totally on topic. Thank you all for your patronage. Obviously, it means a lot to me, and it's super important. So I'm very appreciative of it. I thank you for the questions. Thank you for the opportunity to entertain you. Um, I look forward to continuing to produce all sorts of content for you in the immediate and distant future. So have a great month, and we will see you in November.